I'm Rachel. I'm 19 years old, and I grew up just outside of Detroit. Maybe you know the feeling, that ache in your chest, like you're always standing just outside the glass, watching everyone else live, watching your own world unfold without you ever quite being in it. That was my normal. For years, it felt like my primary role in my family was to be the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who didn't need much, the one they could forget about. And they did. They forgot about a lot. They forgot to ask how my day was, forgotten little milestones, forgotten the things I loved. But the most consistent, most painful forgetting. They forgot my birthday, not every year, not entirely. Sometimes there was a mumbled happy birthday, maybe a card tucked onto my dresser if I was lucky. But there were no parties, no special dinners, no balloons or fanfare, never for me. Growing up, I just accepted it. Chloe, my sister, she got the parties. The big, boisterous affairs with all her friends, decorations spilling into the hall, elaborate cakes. My parents would beam, friends and family would gather, and the air would buzz with celebration, all centered around her. I'd be there, of course, usually helping set up, clearing plates, smiling and nodding, part of the scenery. I used to tell myself it was because I was the older one, the responsible one. Chloe was the baby, she needed the fuss more. Or maybe I was just quieter. Maybe I didn't project celebration the way she did. I came up with a million excuses, little shields to protect my heart from the cold, hard truth. It wasn't about me being older or quieter. It was about who they saw, who they valued enough to celebrate. This year, turning 19 felt different. It wasn't a milestone birthday, not like 18 or 21, but something in me hoped, desperately, for just a little acknowledgement. A cake from the grocery store with my name on it. A family dinner where the conversation wasn't all about Chloe's latest accomplishment or Max the dog's quirky habits. Just one day where I wasn't the background noise. Instead, it was Max's birthday. Max, our golden retriever, was turning 4. And that, apparently, was a reason for a party. A real party. Let me tell you about that party. Because that was the day the glass didn't just feel cold anymore, it felt like it shattered. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To feel like your life is a footnote in someone else's story, even when that someone else is your own family. If you've ever felt invisible, like you're constantly pouring yourself out for people who don't even see you, let me know where you're watching from. Because this is a story about finally deciding to be seen, no matter the cost. It's about finding your voice when you've been silent for too long, and the messy, painful, incredibly liberating journey that follows. Stick around, because it gets worse before it gets better. But trust me, it does get better. My 19th birthday arrived like most of my birthdays did, unmarked on the family calendar, unmentioned in the morning chaos. The air in our house was already thick with anticipation, but not for me. The anticipation was for Max. His 4th birthday was the day after mine. I woke up that morning feeling the usual cautious hope wrestle with the familiar dread. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe someone would remember. I walked into the kitchen, where Mom was already humming, pulling out mixing bowls. Not for pancake batter, I noticed with a familiar pang. These were bigger bowls, the kind she used for cakes. "Morning," I said, my voice quiet. Mom glanced over, her eyes bright with purpose. "Oh, morning, honey. Can you grab the flour from the pantry? We're getting started early." "Getting started on what?" I asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it out loud. She paused, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Max's cake, of course. We want it ready for the party tomorrow, and I thought we could get the decorations up today." My stomach clenched. "Right," I managed, the word feeling like ash on my tongue. Max's cake. There it was, the confirmation. My birthday, the day I turned 19, was simply the day before Max the dog's birthday party. I got the flour. I helped her measure ingredients, the scent of vanilla and sugar thick in the air. "We were making a dog-friendly cake," she explained, specially formulated with things like peanut butter and pumpkin. She chatted excitedly about how cute he would look wearing a little party hat, how much fun the neighbors' kids would have, how Chloe had promised to make dog-themed cupcakes. "Did you have a good sleep?" Mom asked suddenly, stirring the batter vigorously. "It was fine," I said, holding the bag steady for her. "That's good," she nodded, preoccupied. There was no follow-up, no pause for me to say anything else, like, say, "It's my birthday." The moment passed, swallowed by the whir of the mixer and the planning for Max's big day. Later that day, Chloe came home from work, buzzing with energy. She breezed into the kitchen, where Mom and I were carefully frosting the strangely shaped dog cake. "Oh my God, it looks amazing!" Chloe exclaimed, immediately pulling out her phone to take pictures. "Max is going to freak out. Have you guys seen the balloons I got? They have little paw prints. They're adorable, sweetie, Mom cooed, smiling at Chloe. Rachel helped with the frosting, Mom added, almost as an afterthought. Nice, Rach, Chloe said, scrolling through her phone. Hey, Mom, did you remember to get the goodie bags for the kids? I wrote down the list of stuff to put in them. The conversation flowed around me, a fast-moving current of party logistics, all centered on a dog. I was a silent eddy in their stream, my presence barely registered. I kept frosting, the sweet, sticky mixture feeling heavier and heavier on the spatula, a physical manifestation of the weight settling in my chest. That evening, Dad came home. He wasn't one for big displays of affection or long conversations, but he usually managed a hello or a question about school. Hey, Rach, he said as he walked past me in the living room. Hi, Dad, I replied. He went into the kitchen, where Mom and Chloe were now taping up paw print balloons. Looks like you're going all out for Max's big day, he chuckled, joining in the festive atmosphere. He's part of the family, Mom said, tying a balloon to the back of a chair. He deserves a proper celebration. Definitely, Dad agreed. Did you remember to get the special dog treats I saw at the pet store? More planning, more excitement, more focus on the dog. I sat on the couch, the silence around me roaring louder than their cheerful chatter. 19 years. 19 years of being me, of navigating school, friendships, first jobs, the quiet dramas of my own life. 19 years of being their daughter, their sister, and it added up to nothing. No balloons, no cake, not even a whispered happy birthday just for me. I retreated to my room soon after. I didn't want to watch them prepare anymore. The bright balloons, the anticipation in their voices, it all felt like a mockery. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. The hurt was a dull throb, familiar but sharper today, laced with a bitter disappointment that I still, after all these years, had allowed myself to hope. I thought about other years. My 16th birthday, a big deal for many. Chloe had had a huge party for hers the year before, a DJ, a rented photo booth. For mine, we had pizza. Just the four of us. No cake, just store-bought brownies. Mom had said, "You're not really a party person anyway, are you, Rachel?" I'd mumbled agreement, even though deep down, I yearned for just one day where I felt special. There was the time I won an essay contest in 10th grade. A big achievement for me, something I was genuinely proud of. I showed Mom the certificate, expecting praise. She'd glanced at it quickly. "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did you finish clearing out the garage like I asked?" "It needs to be done before your father gets home." My accomplishment, dismissed, immediately followed by an expectation of unpaid labor. Unpaid labor. That was another constant. My chores were never just my chores. They were cleaning the entire house regularly, doing everyone's laundry, running errands for Mom, helping Chloe with school projects, taking care of Max, grocery shopping. While Chloe worked her part-time job and socialized, I managed the household tasks. It was just expected. If I pushed back, even slightly, I was met with exasperation or guilt trips. "We're so busy, Rachel, we just need your help." Or, "It's part of being a family, helping out," said in a tone that implied I was selfish for even questioning it. Financially, it was similar. I got my first job at 16, saving diligently for a beat-up old car. But my savings were constantly being tapped into. "We're a little short this week, honey. Can you lend us a couple hundred? We'll pay you back." They rarely did, or if they did, it was much later, in smaller increments after I'd had to ask multiple times. My savings dwindled. My dream of buying the car faded. Meanwhile, Chloe was given money freely for clothes, gas, nights out. She never seemed to be asked to contribute to the household in the same way, with her time or her money. It wasn't just the big things, like birthdays or money, it was the everyday. Sitting at dinner, listening to Mom and Dad talk endlessly about Chloe's classes, her friends, her plans for the future. If I tried to talk about my own life, my own classes, my own tentative dreams, the conversation would often peter out, or someone would interrupt to ask Chloe a question. "Rachel, what are you thinking of doing after high school?" Mom asked once. Before I could answer, Chloe chimed in. "Oh, she should totally go to community college first, save some money. That's what I'm doing." "That's a sensible idea, Rachel," Dad said, nodding. My own thoughts, my own research, my own quiet aspirations were overridden, redirected by Chloe's offhand suggestion and my parents' immediate agreement. It happened constantly. My opinions, my feelings, my needs, they were secondary, if they were acknowledged at all. The hardest part wasn't just the neglect, it was the gaslighting, subtle and pervasive. If I ever tried to articulate my feelings, even gently, I was met with blank stares or gentle but firm dismissal. I sometimes feel like Chloe gets more attention than me, I ventured once to Mom, choosing my words carefully. Her eyes widened slightly, a look of hurt accusation crossing her face. Oh, Rachel, that's not true. We love you both the same. It's just, Chloe needs us more right now. She's younger, she's still finding her way. Chloe was only a year and a half younger. You're so independent, dear, we don't have to worry about you as much. Independent, the word felt like a cage. My self-sufficiency wasn't praised, it was used as a justification for neglect. Because I could manage, I was expected to, without support, without recognition. Because Chloe needed them, or was perceived to need them, she got everything. My quiet competence was my downfall, her more vocal dependence was her advantage. Over time, I learned not to ask, not to expect, not to voice my needs. I built walls around my heart, tried to convince myself that being invisible was easier than being seen and dismissed. I became a master of saying, I'm fine, even when I was crumbling inside. I focused on being useful, hoping that if I made myself indispensable, they would finally see my value. It was a futile hope. My labor was invisible, my emotional contributions unacknowledged. I was the reliable, free resource they never had to think about. And so, on my 19th birthday, as the house filled with the scent of dog cake and the sounds of party preparations for Max, the cumulative weight of all those years, all those moments of quiet dismissal, settled on me. The birthday itself was just the latest, clearest example. But it wasn't just the birthday, it was everything. The money I'd lent and never got back. The hours spent cleaning and cooking while they relaxed. The conversations where my voice was lost. The constant, gnawing feeling that I wasn't enough, wasn't worthy of the same love and attention freely given to others, even to the family pet. I lay in my room, tears silently tracking paths down my temples into my hair. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that a dog's 4th birthday was a bigger event than my 19th. It wasn't fair that my hard work and quiet needs were ignored while Chloe's wants were prioritized. It wasn't fair that I was constantly expected to give, with nothing given back. The pain was deep, a cold, hollow ache. It wasn't just about a party. It was about feeling fundamentally unseen, undervalued, and unloved in the way every child deserves to be loved, unconditionally, for simply existing, not for what they can do or how little trouble they cause. Something shifted that night. Lying there in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of my family's cheerful preparations for the next day's celebration, a quiet anger began to stir beneath the pain. It wasn't a hot, explosive rage, but a cold, steady resolve. I couldn't go on like this. I couldn't keep being the invisible daughter, the unpaid helper, the forgotten sister. The cost was too high. It was costing me my self-worth, my joy, my very sense of self. The next day dawned bright and sunny, a perfect day for a dog's birthday party. Downstairs, the house was already buzzing. Chloe was blowing up more balloons, Dad was setting up a small kiddie pool outside, and Mom was arranging dog treats on a platter. I got dressed, feeling numb. I went downstairs. Morning, I said again, my voice flat. Morning, Rach, Mom said brightly. Could you help Chloe hang that banner, and then maybe set out the water glasses? Okay, I said, moving robotically to help. I helped hang the banner that read Happy Bark Day, Max. I set out the water glasses. I watched as the first guests arrived, neighbors with their kids, Chloe's friends who were also dog lovers. The air filled with laughter, the yips and barks of dogs, the general joyous chaos of a party. Max, oblivious to my inner turmoil, looked adorable in his little party hat, tail wagging furiously. He seemed genuinely happy, surrounded by attention and treats. And in that moment, watching my family dote on him, on the guests, on Chloe, while I was just another person helping make their party happen, the quiet resolve from the night before hardened into steel. I remember standing by the snack table, arranging napkins. A neighbor I'd known my whole life smiled at me. Oh, Rachel, you're getting so tall. 19 now, right? All grown up. Just turned 19 yesterday, actually, I said, my voice steady, maybe a little too loud. The neighbor's smile faltered. Oh, yesterday? Happy belated birthday, dear. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. Mom, overhearing, bustled over, a slightly strained smile on her face. Oh, Rachel knows we celebrated her earlier. We had a lovely family dinner. This was a lie. We had the usual dinner, where we talked about Max's upcoming party. Right, honey? I looked at Mom. Her eyes held a silent plea, a warning. Don't make a scene. Go along with it. But the steel in my gut refused to bend. No, Mom, I said, my voice clear and calm, cutting through the party noise. We didn't. We had a normal dinner. We didn't celebrate my birthday. A silence fell over the immediate group. The neighbor looked uncomfortable. Mom's face flushed. Chloe, who had been nearby, turned, her eyes wide. Dad drifted over, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Rachel, Mom said, her tone low and sharp, now isn't the time. When is the time, Mom? I asked, my voice still calm, but with an edge I didn't recognize. When is the time to acknowledge that you completely forgot my birthday, again? That we're having a party with balloons and cake for the dog, the day after I turned 19, and no one even said anything to me? We didn't forget, Dad interjected, his brows furrowed. You didn't say you wanted anything. I shouldn't have to ask to be remembered, I said, the calmness starting to crack, a tremor entering my voice. Chloe never had to ask for her parties. Max didn't have to ask for this. I gestured around at the festive scene. You just did it for them. That's different, Chloe said quickly. I was younger when I had those big parties, and Max is a dog, it's fun for the kids. So, being 19 isn't worth celebrating. I challenged, looking at her, then Mom, then Dad. And my feelings aren't as important as entertaining the neighbor's kids with a dog. Mom stepped forward, lowering her voice further, a placating yet controlling tone. Rachel, let's talk about this later. We have guests. No, I said, shaking my head. Later never comes. Later is why I'm standing here on the day after my birthday, having this conversation while there's a giant cake for the dog on the counter. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. You're being dramatic, Mom sighed, casting a look at the neighbor who was now edging away awkwardly. Am I? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Is it dramatic to want my own family to remember my birthday? Is it dramatic to feel hurt when you go all out for a pet and ignore your own daughter? Dad put a hand on my arm. Rachel, calm down, you're upsetting your mother. Upsetting her? Of course. My pain was secondary to her discomfort. My being upset doesn't seem to matter much, I said, pulling my arm away gently. But okay, you want me to stop being dramatic in front of everyone? Fine. I took a deep breath, looking around at the balloons, the cake, the happy faces focused on the dog. It was all so absurdly clear now. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This was a pattern. This was who they were, and I couldn't change them. I could only change how I reacted to it. Enjoy the party, I said, my voice now low and steady again, devoid of the tremor. It wasn't a wish, it was a statement of detachment. I turned and walked away. I walked through the living room, up the stairs, to my bedroom. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't look back. I closed my bedroom door, not slamming it, just closing it quietly but firmly. Inside my room, the carefully held back tears finally came, a torrent of grief, anger, and release. I wasn't just crying about the birthday. I was crying for the little girl who always hoped, for the teenager who tried so hard to be good enough, for the young woman who finally saw the painful truth. That confrontation wasn't a resolution, it was an explosion. It blew open the carefully constructed facade of normal our family lived behind. The immediate aftermath was tense and cold. Mom didn't come to my room, neither did Dad or Chloe. The party downstairs continued, the muffled sounds of celebration a stark contrast to the silence in my room. Hours later, after the guests had left, Mom knocked softly. I didn't answer. She knocked again. Rachel, can we talk? I hesitated, then opened the door a crack. She stood there, looking tired and annoyed, not concerned. That was completely out of line, she said, her voice tight. You embarrassed us, in front of the neighbors. And what about you? You embarrassed me. My whole life, I retorted, the anger flaring again. That's unfair, she said. We give you a roof over your head, food, everything you need. And this is how you repay us? By making a scene? The shift was immediate and familiar, from her being in the wrong to me being ungrateful. The classic maneuver. Everything I need, I repeated, stepping into the hallway. Is that what you think? A roof and food is everything I need? What about feeling like I matter? What about feeling loved, not just like a convenient helper? Don't be ridiculous, she scoffed. We love you, you know that. Her tone said otherwise. It said I was being difficult. Do I? I challenged. Because it feels like you love Chloe more. It feels like you love Max the dog more. It feels like I'm just here, useful sometimes, but not really seen. That's not true, she insisted, but her eyes darted away. Chloe is different. She's had more struggles. This was a common refrain, usually vague and unsubstantiated struggles that somehow always required more parental attention and resources than my concrete needs. And what about my struggles? I asked, my voice trembling. The times I needed help or just someone to talk to. You were always too busy with Chloe, or asking me to do something for you. We all make sacrifices for family, she said, her chin lifting slightly, the conversation shifting to abstract duty. Sacrifices? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping. I feel like I'm the only one making sacrifices. My savings for your bills, my time for your errands, my emotional energy for listening to you complain, my needs for Chloe's wants. What sacrifices have you made for me? She didn't answer immediately. She just stared at me, her expression shifting from annoyance to a cold, hard look I hadn't seen directed at me with such intensity before. Maybe you're right, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Maybe you don't appreciate what you have here. That line, it hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threat. The implication was clear. If you don't like it, leave. And in that moment, facing her cold anger, something inside me solidified completely. The fear was still there, a knot in my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, protective instinct for myself. I couldn't live under this roof anymore, under this constant weight of expectation and dismissal. Maybe I don't, I agreed, my voice as quiet as hers but steady. Maybe I don't. I closed the door again, not gently this time. It clicked shut with a quiet finality that echoed the decision forming in my mind. I had to leave. I had to build a life where I was seen, where my contributions were valued, where my birthday was remembered not because I asked, but because I mattered. Leaving wasn't easy. It took months of quiet planning, saving every dollar I earned at my part-time job, researching shared apartments, packing my belongings in secret. The atmosphere at home remained strained. After the confrontation, they mostly ignored me, or interacted only to make requests. There were no apologies, no attempts at understanding, just a frosty distance. Chloe seemed bewildered, unsure how to react to the fissure that had opened. Dad avoided me, and Mom acted as if I was a difficult tenant she tolerated out of obligation. I leaned heavily on my best friend Liam. I told him everything, the years of feeling invisible, the birthday incident, the painful confrontation. He listened without judgment, offering validation and practical support. He helped me look for apartments, reviewed rental agreements, and simply reminded me, again and again, that I deserved to be treated with love and respect. His friendship was an unexpected lifeline in those dark months. The day I moved out was quiet. I'd rented a small truck, loaded my boxes myself with Liam's help. Mom was at work, Dad was out, Chloe was home but stayed in her room. There was no tearful goodbye, no last-minute reconciliation attempt, just the sound of footsteps on the stairs, boxes being carried, the truck door closing. I left a short note on the kitchen counter. I've moved out, I'll be in touch about getting the rest of my things. Love, Rachel. I didn't know if I meant the love part anymore, but it felt like a necessary formality, a final nod to the family ties I was severing, or at least drastically redefining. Driving away, looking back at the house that had been my home for 19 years, I felt a complex mix of grief and exhilaration. Grief for the family I longed for but never had, for the childhood where I felt overlooked. Exhilaration for the unknown road ahead, for the possibility of building something new, something where I could finally breathe. My first apartment was small and slightly dingy, but it was mine. The silence was different from the silence at home. It wasn't the silence of being ignored, but the silence of peace, of being alone but not lonely. I furnished it with second-hand pieces, painted the walls a soft blue. It was a sanctuary. The initial months were hard, adjusting to complete independence, managing money tightly, dealing with the emotional fallout of leaving. There were moments of doubt, of missing the familiar, even if dysfunctional, rhythm of family life. Guilt would sometimes creep in, the insidious voice of years of conditioning telling me I was selfish, ungrateful, making a mistake. My family's reaction was exactly as I expected. Mom sent angry texts about how I'd abandoned them, how I was ungrateful, how I'd broken her heart. Dad was mostly silent, occasionally sending a text asking if I was okay, but never acknowledging the reasons I left. Chloe was confused, hurt by my leaving, but still seemingly unable to grasp the depth of my pain or the pattern of favoritism. There was no attempt from them to understand, no apology for the birthday or anything else. It was all about their feelings, their perception of being wronged. It reinforced, yet again, that my feelings, my reality, were not important to them. Establishing boundaries was the next crucial step, and it was difficult. They expected me to come back as if nothing had happened, to resume my role as the helpful daughter. Phone calls were tense, filled with passive aggression and attempts to guilt-trip me. "We barely see you anymore," Mom would say, her voice laced with accusation. "We miss you. How can you do this to us?" "I needed to live my own life," I'd respond, my voice stronger now than it used to be. "I can't keep living the way things were." "The way things were was fine," she'd insist, erasing my reality. I learned to limit contact, to say no to requests that felt like the old patterns re-emerging. It was painful. There were holidays I spent alone, or with Liam and his family because I couldn't face the tension at home. There were birthdays that passed without a call from them, a different kind of pain, but also less sharp than the performance of conditional love. The peace I found wasn't the absence of pain, but the presence of self-respect. I grieved the loss of the family I wished I had, but I stopped yearning for them to change. I focused on building my own life, making my own choices, finding validation from within and from supportive people like Liam. I got a better job, saved money, and finally bought that beat-up old car I'd dreamed of. It wasn't fancy, but it represented freedom, independence, and the reclaiming of my own resources. I started pursuing hobbies I'd never had time or energy for before. I made new friends who saw me, truly saw me, and appreciated me for who I was. Slowly, painfully, I built a new identity. I wasn't just the quiet, helpful daughter anymore. I was Rachel, an independent young woman finding her way, capable, resilient, and worthy. The invisibility I'd felt for so long began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. I learned that my worth wasn't dependent on my family's validation, or on how much I sacrificed for them. My worth was inherent. The journey wasn't linear. There were days I felt strong and resolved, and days I felt lost and heartbroken. Therapy helped immensely, providing a safe space to process the years of emotional neglect and develop healthier coping mechanisms. I learned about family dynamics, about favoritism, about setting boundaries with toxic people, even when they are family. Over time, my relationship with my family shifted into something distant but manageable. Contact became limited to occasional texts or brief phone calls. We avoided emotional topics. They never truly apologized, never acknowledged the depth of the hurt they caused, but I stopped needing them to. Their inability to see my pain became their problem, not mine. Chloe and I maintained a fragile connection. She began to see, slowly, over time, the dynamics I'd been talking about, especially as she navigated her own adult relationships with our parents. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but there was a glimmer of understanding, a shared history that wasn't entirely defined by the favoritism. Looking back now, from a place of greater peace and perspective, I can see the patterns so clearly. The way my mother sought validation through Chloe's achievements, the way my father passively enabled the dynamic, the way my quiet nature made me an easy target for being overlooked. I don't hate them. There's still a complex mix of sadness, anger, and even a residual, confusing love, but I understand, and understanding is its own kind of liberation. The birthday party for Max wasn't the cause of my pain, it was the catalyst. It was the moment the years of subtle neglect and overt favoritism culminated in an image so stark, so absurd, that it forced me to see the truth I'd been avoiding. It hurt immensely, but that hurt ultimately led me to break free. Reclaiming my self-worth has been a process of undoing years of conditioning, of silencing the voices that told me I wasn't enough, that my needs were secondary. It's about listening to my own voice now, trusting my own feelings and prioritizing my own well-being. It's about recognizing that I am worthy of love, attention, and celebration, just like anyone else. It's a powerful thing, taking back your own story. For so long, my narrative felt written by others, by their expectations, their limitations, their inability to see me. Now, I hold the pen. I decide who I am, who is in my life, and how I deserve to be treated. 19 years old, feeling invisible and heartbroken, watching a party for a dog while my own birthday passed unacknowledged. That was me, but that's not all of me. That was just the beginning of the story, the part where the old world shattered, making way for a new one to be built, piece by painful, powerful piece. And that new world? It's not perfect. There are still scars, moments of doubt, but it's mine, and in it, I am seen, I am heard. And my birthday? It's a day I celebrate now, not waiting for anyone else to remember, but celebrating myself, my journey, my resilience, and the quiet strength it took to walk away from the shadow and step into the light. So, that was my story. The birthday, the dog cake, the shattering realization, and the long road to building a life where I'm not invisible anymore. If any part of this resonated with you, that feeling of being overlooked, of sacrificing yourself for others, of finally deciding you deserve more, know that you are not alone. It's a hard journey, finding your voice and setting boundaries, especially with family. There will be pain, guilt, and resistance. But there will also be clarity, peace, and the incredible lightness of finally being true to yourself. Your worth isn't determined by how much you do for others or by whether they remember your birthday. Your worth is inherent. You are enough, just as you are, deserving of love, respect, and yes, celebration. If you're going through something similar, know that change is possible. It starts with acknowledging your feelings, with seeing the truth, even when it hurts. And it continues with small steps, maybe talking to a trusted friend, maybe journaling, maybe setting a tiny boundary. Be kind to yourself through the process. Thank you for listening. If this story helped you feel a little less alone, please give it a like. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about navigating difficult relationships and finding your own path. And share your thoughts or your own experiences in the comments below. I read them all. Remember, you are seen, you matter, and your story is worth telling.